You are listening to Sean of the South, and I'm your host tonight, Sean Dietrich, and we're coming to you live with the podcast airwaves and the radios all over the nation, and man, it is a privilege. This fine group of guys you see behind me here tonight, fixing to play music for you, are the Misty Mountain String Band, everybody. The Misty Mountain String Band. Well, we're going to read you a little bit of our mail tonight. A little bit of our mail sent in to us from listeners all over the country. Listeners who had nothing better to do than to write us and our 6 listeners. First letter this evening comes from Mary Donovan in Denver, Colorado. Sean, I stumbled onto your show online, and I listened to the first one, and I hated it. The second one was really not a whole lot better. But the third one started to grow on me. So now I guess what I'm saying, I've listened to a lot of them now. I like your work. Keep up the good work. Your friend, Mary. Dear Mary, I don't know how to answer that, so I'll just say thank you with a question mark on the end. Charlotte Monroe, Opelika, Alabama. I was with my son yesterday. We were walking through JCPenney, and my son was very, very fascinated with the mannequins in the lingerie section. And he said, Mom, who makes the mannequins in this store? And I was like, don't worry, son, don't worry about that. And I tried to keep him walking, but he finally just stopped and he stared. So I grabbed him by the shoulder. I said, artists make the mannequins, honey. Artists make those mannequins. And I forgot all about it. We did our thing in the mall. And later that night at dinner, my son announced to the table, Mom, I want to be an artist when I grow up so I can make those mannequins like we saw today. Sean, I really don't know how to feel about this, but I guess what I'm saying is we have an artist in the family. This letter comes to us from somebody who refers to himself as Nobody Special in Donaldsonville, Georgia. Sean, I was not expected to do much in high school. I was a slacker, and I made bad grades. And for the most part, I went unnoticed by a whole lot of people. But I published my first book this month, and I am so proud of myself for it. It goes largely unnoticed, but that's okay. It means something to me. I'm so excited. I just wanted to share it with someone who would get what I'm talking about. Since you are a writer too, I thought maybe that guy would be you. Us ordinary people sometimes can do extraordinary things when nobody is watching us. Dear Nobody Special, I think you are indeed somebody very, very special. Miller Ackerman, Redding, California. I am 9 years old, and I like your show. I found you when a friend on my soccer team was listening to you with his mother, and we were laughing about it. I was wondering, do you ever come to California? And if you do, will you please let us know, because my mom and me would like to come see you someday. Dear Miller, you got it, but I don't foresee myself heading to California anytime soon. Fritz Nordmeyer, Tampa, Florida. I have a mother who is not doing very well. She's in bad shape, and she's losing her fight a little more each time we visit. I am praying for her, and I do believe that God hears prayers. Sometimes I think when she's getting better, she's not getting better. She just starts going downhill again. I want to tell you, Sean, something my mother was always good at telling me. Keep up the good work, because what you're doing matters in life. And I particularly want to thank you for what you do, because I need a break from real life every now and then, and you seem to do that for me. Dear Fritz, keep up the good fight, buddy. Chaz Wormwood, Madison, Wisconsin. Sean, it's cold up north. Maybe not to some people who've lived their whole lives here in Wisconsin, but to me, I was born and raised in Georgia. And I'm not used to these temperatures, not at all. I will be spending my first winter up here, and I pray I will survive it. I miss home down south, and I miss the people there. The people here are nice, don't get me wrong. They're sweet as can be. But I guess I'm just very homesick. Signed, Chaz. Alan D. Smith, Fort Smith, Arkansas. Sean, my wife is turning 69 this Thursday. And she is the love of my life and a big fan of your stuff. I just wanted to do something that would make this day exceptional for her. She will be listening to your show because she'll be on her way home from where she was helping my daughter welcome our first grandbaby, an adopted child from overseas, into our lives. So tell my wife to drive safe. Tell her that I love her. She'll probably listen to this en route in her rental car. And when she hears my name, Alan D. Smith, she will freak out. Dear wife of Alan D. Smith, your husband forgot to tell me your name. So drive safe on your way home. And congratulations on your new grandbaby. Sarah Breckens, Huntsville, Alabama. Up in the sticks, way back in the hills, there's a Free Will Baptist church that I used to go to. It was a small church, and when I was growing up, it was special to our lives. My friends and I weren't exactly good kids, but we were good-hearted, if that makes sense. These are lifelong friends, and I still have them with me today. Not many of us have lost touch, and most of us have survived except for one. We are thick and thin kind of people. That means we help each other whenever we need help. We have our own families now, and we have our own things going on. But those memories from that little church are special. My friend Derek is the one who introduced me to your show. And I just want to congratulate him for the birth of 2 fine boys this week, twin boys. I don't know why I didn't think to message you sooner, but it just occurred to me when I was listening to your last show. If you read this on the air, tell my friend Derek and his wife Jill that I love them and I'm praying for them, and let's get together soon. Derek and Jill, if you need to hear that again, rewind it. Sherry Banks, Anniston, Alabama. Sean, you're never going to believe this, but I heard my 2 kids, Lisa and Cameron, listening to your show a few days ago in my daughter's bedroom. They were totally enamored with it, listening to it on their iPad. So even though you might not think that you're the kind of person who speaks to children, I think you should know that my kids think you're pretty cool. They were telling a few of your jokes at breakfast to me and my husband, and I was just smiling because I knew what they were already talking about before they said it. And then they started singing some of your irreverent parody Sunday school songs. And I warned them never to sing these songs in school for fear that we will be kicked out of our church. Anyway, thank you. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say. Well, dear Sherry, my God, nobody in this planet has ever accused me of being a good influence on children. But I will say I'm so glad they chose me. Nobody expected much out of me in my life, much like one of our letters we just read tonight. So I'm glad, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful that Lisa and Cameron have decided to choose me to be popping through their iPad in their bedroom. Lisa and Cameron, if you're listening to this, I want you to heed your mother's instruction and don't sing those Sunday school songs in your church. She's serious about that. And that's letters from our listeners. We're going to have another tune here from Misty Mountain String Band, everybody. Misty Mountain String Band.
What does it take to make love grow? Give me the seeds and I'll learn to sow. My heart is bound to burst for you, shooting from its rocky tomb, opening like a rose in bloom. My heart adrift and lost at sea, an empty sail, useless, incomplete. Well, I was lonely, I'll confess, till you blew in from the west, filled the space inside of my chest. And your love is all I needed. Life was a puzzle missing too many pieces. You found every piece I was missing. Now the picture is complete. You're standing there with me, just like it was meant to be. When the creeping darkness comes, the fog settles in and the day has long been done. Out of the darkness shout my name. You bring the oil, I'll bring a flame, a light, a lamp to lead the way. And your love is all I needed. Life was a puzzle missing too many pieces. You found every piece I was missing. Now the picture is complete. You're standing there with me, just like it was meant to be. thought I'd run out of words to write. 10 years together seems like such a long time. Give me the ink, hand me a page. I'll recount this love we've made. It's growing stronger every day. And your love was all I needed. Life was a puzzle missing too many pieces. You found every piece I was missing. Now the picture is complete. You're standing there with me, just like it was meant to be. And your love is all I needed. Life was a puzzle missing too many pieces. You found every piece I was missing. Now the picture is complete. You're standing there with me, just like it was meant to be. And now the picture is complete. You're standing there with me, just like it was meant to be.
Well, November has come with an icy gust of wind, kind of blew in from the north, and it cooled off our world. Then it started to rain, which cooled it off even more. Saw the weatherman from Dothan, Alabama, the Dothan News Channel. He was on TV, and he was waving his hand over a big digital map. He said, folks, this is going to be some of the coldest temperatures in all history down south. We're expecting icy temperatures. Make sure you wear your parkas and double jeans and 2 pairs of socks and boots and mittens and cover your face with a scarf and wear a few hats, because we're going to get temperatures down to 58 degrees. 58 degrees is cold to people in our part of the world. This is not just cold. This is real cold, bone cold. It's the kind that makes your kidneys stop working and your bones feel like they're going to crack. Most of the time we are hot in this part of the world. We're hot, and we are used to that. We like the feeling of sweat pouring down our backs and our hair being matted to our foreheads and our clothes being completely saturated. This is why, as Southern Baptists, we like to gather on the church lawn and do supper on the grounds in the summertime when the temperatures get upwards into 152 and 153 degrees. This is because we do this for visitors. We want our visitors who might not be members of our church to know firsthand what hell will feel like. And this is why we hit them up with Bill Gaither songs, because we want them to know that Southern Baptists can tolerate the heat and we can sing hymns in spite of it. My mother loves November more than any other month because my mother is a constant outdoor sitter. That's what women from her generation do. They go out on their porches and they sit. Her mother used to do the same thing. She'd go out on the porch and she would smoke Winston cigarettes and watch the wildlife behind her trailer. My mother, she sits on the back porch. I was with her not long ago, and she was watching. There was a cardinal came flying up, a little cardinal bird, red bird. And my mother said, do you know that a cardinal is one of the few birds that will not leave and go somewhere warm, even when it gets cold out? I said, no, I didn't know that. She said, oh, it's true. A cardinal will stay even though the weather changes. Even if it were to start snowing like it did snow in Alabama in 1966, cardinals never left. They stayed right where they were. I said, well, that's an interesting fact, Mama. Where'd you learn that? She said, I read that in a Southern Living cookbook. November is the time when the Southern Living cookbooks come off the shelf, and we have Southern Living cookbooks dating back to the early 1900s. Yes, November carries with it anticipation. Oh, I love it. I love the anticipation of November more than I love the holidays that we anticipate. You can hope for something good to come in November. You see way on the distant horizon. You see Thanksgiving is awaiting for you. And after Thanksgiving is Christmas. And after Christmas is New Year's. And after New Year's comes a deep, dark, black depression that will make you consider what you're doing on this world. But before all that, it's the anticipation. And I love this because I can look forward to Thanksgiving without getting too close to it. Because once you get too close to something good, you start to have expectations of it. And that's excitement, which is very different than anticipation. Excitement only leads to disappointment. If you don't believe me, just go ask someone who's been married for 49 years. Just ask them if they was excited on the day of their wedding. And they'll tell you, yeah, I was excited, but excitement can't last. It leads to disappointment. That's what Christmas is. Christmas is pure excitement. That's all December. December opens with pure adrenaline excitement. And parents behave very strangely. They start doing all sorts of things for their kids. They start feeling the pressure to provide the greatest single day of the year. The greatest day of the year, Christmas. The fantastic holiday that should live in a child's memory for the rest of his life. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure. This is why fathers do bizarre things. They get in their minivans and they drive up into town by the Winn-Dixie and they go to them circus tent Christmas tree farms and they pick out the perfect balsam fir with the exactly perfect pine needle to branch ratio. Perfect shape, perfect size, and then they strap this thing to the top of their minivan like they've just killed a prehistoric beast with a spear. And they drive it home triumphantly, and they unload it, and they do what fathers have been doing since the beginning of time. They march it indoors, and they place it in one of those godforsaken red and green Christmas tree stands. Those Christmas tree stands do not work. They never have worked since their inception. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out why, as a culture, we have learned how to put a man on the moon. We've learned how to make our cell phones talk to us. We have built artificial intelligent robots which man the nuclear reactor in Fukushima, Japan. But we cannot figure out how to make a Christmas tree stand that doesn't have those silly corkscrews on it that do not work. And thus the American fathers will prop that sucker up in the corner, and after fiddling with it for a few minutes, they will just throw their hands up and say a few four-letter words and leave the room. Because Christmas is nothing but this excitement lingering in the air, and it causes people to do weird things. There's a lot of pressure to buy your children the perfect gift. This is why you can walk into Walmart and see grown men wearing Columbia sportswear, nice watches, and $10 haircuts, coming to blows in the middle of the toy aisle, fist fighting, just like they were on the street, over the last pair of high-top tennis shoes with the glowing neon lights in the heels. Because a father will do whatever he can to make sure his son has the same opportunities all the other kids have. And if the son comes home and says everybody's getting these glowing shoes, by God, that father will go across the county line, across the state line, across the city, just to make sure his son has that exact pair of glowing neon shoes. Because if that child shows up to school without that pair of shoes, life is hinging upon little things like this. That means that child would have to sit in the cafeteria with children who pick their nose and eat their own boogers and rate their farts on scales of 1 to 10. These are not the influences you want. Because if these kids are the ones who influence your child, that means your child will probably end up in community college. And if he ends up in community college, that means he is more likely to be influenced by a man who is an adjunct professor who grows his hair long and hasn't shaved since he was 24 years old and plays the guitar. And if your child is influenced by a man who hadn't shaved since he was 24 and plays the guitar, he will probably grow up and learn the guitar too and find a way to make a living at a beach bar in Orange Beach, Alabama, playing the blues and songs like Free Bird and Brown Eyed Girl, and living on tips that are placed into an empty Duke's mayonnaise jar as his sole means of income, and eating Van Camp's pork and beans for supper, and having to live on the couch of one of his friends' houses. And he will visit you and ask to borrow your minivan. You will give him the keys to your minivan, and he will drive that thing until he is 55 years old and eligible for AARP. That is December. That is December. But November's exciting. My Aunt Eula and my Uncle Dietrich, they were on their way to my cousin Anna Lou's house. She always puts on Thanksgiving. My Aunt Eula and Uncle Dietrich have 3 kids. That means they have to go to 4 separate Thanksgivings every single year. One Thanksgiving in Samson, Alabama, one in Pensacola, Florida, one in Montgomery, Alabama, and one back at their house, the big coup de grace of Thanksgiving suppers. My Aunt Eula knows how to cook everything that all the great women of history have cooked. She knows how to make turkey that tastes like it just came off of a heavenly wagon bound for Beulah land. She knows how to make squash casserole, green bean casserole with the French fried onion rings on top. She knows how to make biscuits thick enough to be used in pillow fights. She wouldn't know what a Pillsbury biscuit out of a tube is, not even if you paid her $1 million would she even attempt to cook such a thing. They were on their way to Anna Lou's house, and in the back seat were all these casserole tins and serving dishes covered in saran wrap and aluminum foil. And my Uncle Dietrich, he was driving their Lincoln LTD. He's a quiet man. In fact, he's so quiet sometimes that you wonder if he's even breathing. He was driving forward along those rural highways up to Samson, Alabama, and my Aunt Eula was just looking out the window and thinking to herself how much life had changed. How much life had changed. There was a time when her life was nothing but children. She had children everywhere. There were always kids who were friends of her children in her house. She was feeding children at the supper table, and she was always driving them where they needed to be and making sure they had enough food to sustain a stable brain state to do well in school. And then they all got married and moved on and had their own lives, and nowhere or no certain time of year is this more keenly felt than on Thanksgiving, when you're around families together. Yes, it was the first week in November, and not truly Thanksgiving, but because they go to 4 different Thanksgivings, the first one in Samson, Alabama is always the best. It's always the best because my Aunt Eula gets to see the grandkids, and the boys get to hang out in the little shed. They parked in the driveway, and there were all sorts of other cars parked in a line, parked on the sides of the roads. My Aunt Eula looked at Uncle Dietrich. She said, "This is bigger than last year. I don't remember this many people being here last year." He said, "Oh, well, you know, JD's family's coming to town. That's what Anna Lou told me." She said, "They are? They came into... Anna Lou didn't tell me that. And I'm her mother." He said, "Oh, well, I just talked to her on the phone yesterday, and she said JD's parents were coming into town. They were bringing her sister, too." My Aunt Eula had never seen so many cars at this small family get-together. They walked up that sidewalk. There were dogs following them. These dogs must have been dogs that came with family members who'd made the long drive to Samson. They had formed an impromptu pack, and they were looking to take down my Uncle Dietrich. They were circling around him and jumping. They wanted that squash casserole he was carrying in his hands. They knocked on the door, and Anna Lou and JD came to the door. JD, her husband. My Aunt Eula noticed that Anna Lou was wearing a black dress with black high-heel pumps and black pearl earrings. And JD was wearing a black button-down shirt, and he was wearing a Rolex watch and black slacks and black shoes. My Aunt Eula looked at my Uncle Dietrich, who was wearing a pair of corduroy slacks and an Alabama University football T-shirt. He looked like an old coyote. My Aunt Eula said, "Happy Thanksgiving. "Why are you so dressed up?" she whispered to Indaloo. And Indaloo said, "Oh, well, JD's parents came into town. And, they do things differently up there from Pennsylvania. They're just a little bit more, they're not like us." "Oh," said my Aunt Eula. They walked into the house, and everybody kind of found their places around their Thanksgiving posts. Everybody has a job at Thanksgiving. The women, the hens, the mother hens of the tribe, they all find their way into the kitchen where they make life and death decisions regarding the food. And the men, they all stand in the living room, or they sit at the couches and cross their legs, and they take turns clearing their throats and sniffing their noses real loud before they brag about something. My Aunt Eula, she's in the kitchen. She was in the kitchen with everybody else. All these casserole dishes were stacked side by side by side by side. They went on forever, as far as the eye could see. She's been cooking the same thing every Thanksgiving for years and years and years. The same things that her children love. While she was adjusting these casserole dishes on the counter, in came Miss Linda, who was JD's mother, Indaloo's mother-in-law. She was carrying a 2-foot-long salmon. It had big old eyes. The head was still on, and his eyes were as big as ball bearings and a big floppy tail. And she slapped it down on the counter. And my Aunt Eula looked at that fish. She said, "What is that?" Indaloo came over. She said, "Oh, Mama, I didn't introduce you to Miss Linda. Miss Linda, this is my mama. Mama, this is Miss Linda, JD's mother." My Aunt Eula looked at that fish. She said, "A fish for Thanksgiving?" Miss Linda smiled, and she said, Why didn't Indaloo tell you? We're all pescatarian." My Aunt Eula looked at that woman, and she said, "Well, a pescatarian, okay. I thought y'all were Democrats." She said, No, Miss Eula, a pescatarian is somebody who eats fish as their primary protein. They don't eat chicken or pork or beef or bacon or eggs or dairy. They just eat grains, legumes, and fruits and veggies and fish. My Aunt Eula had never heard of such. She said, "Oh, okay, a pescatarian. I thought you said, okay, yeah, of course, I know what that is." My cousin Indaloo kind of hung her head. She said, "Sorry, Mama, I meant to tell you. We've all just kind of switched. That's just how the family does things now. Ever since JD's cholesterol was a little bit too high, the doctor of Pennsylvania suggested that he, Oh, of course, said my Aunt Eula. Right about that time, into the door walked one of the in-law uncles. He said, "What is a fish doing on the counter?" My Aunt Eula looked at the fish, and she said, "Oh, it's because they're pescatarian." He said, "Well, Eula, darling, would you mind reaching in that refrigerator behind you and get me a beer because I'm a Episcopalian?" Thanksgiving was a wonderful meal, just like it always is. All the casserole dishes piled up side by side, served as an impromptu buffet line. The children walked through the line, dishing their plates, making heaps of food on top their dishes. I myself, growing up, used to eat so much food in Thanksgiving. I would go out to the driveway, and I would be doubled over, and I would still have room for pumpkin pie or pecan pie. These children, they were eating food, too much carbohydrates, before they even sat down to the table. When everybody had found their space at the table, Indaloo asked my Uncle Dietrich to stand up and say the blessing. And he stood, and he straightened his belt, and he said, "Let us all bow our heads, please." He said, "Bless us, O Lord. Thank you for your blessings upon us. Make us truly grateful." And this is the old man prayer men have been praying since the beginning of time. It's a 5-word prayer. Make us truly grateful. I love this prayer. You can visit any old man USA and hear him offer this little prayer. Aunt Eula had her hands folded on her lap and her head bowed, and she was looking around the table. And she saw all these people wearing dark colors and nice clothes, while she and Dietrich were wearing cotton and denim. and corduroy and roll-tied T-shirts. And she felt out of place. The world had changed on her. Lou had changed on her. Her own daughter had just become somebody else. Had her own family, had her own children. Everybody said amen, and everybody ate their food. And when it was all said and done, all the women found their way back to the kitchen, and the older women stood by the sink full of suds and soap water, and the young women stood next to them with towels slung over their shoulders, and they were drying dishes. The older women were washing them, the younger women were drying them, and the children were taking the dishes and marching them around to the right cabinets. And they would always get it wrong, and the older women would say, no, it doesn't go there, it goes over there. Jesse, show your daughter where that dish goes. And this is how it went. My Aunt Eula had just kind of had enough. She needed a break. She set her towel down, and she walked outside on that back porch. She stood there. She looked into the distance. Beside her were a few men she did not know from Pennsylvania who were wearing dark colors. They were having a conversation, smoking cigarettes, and she could smell their strange smelling cologne over the smell of their tobacco. And she smiled at them politely and stared out at those long leaf pines in the distance of Samson, Alabama, that poke upward into that gray, gloomy sky. It was 55 degrees and it was cold. And she felt cold inside too. The world had just altered itself upon her. All her life had revolved around children. It always had revolved around children. She was born to be that way. She was born with a baby on her hip. She was born to be the kind of woman who woke up in the mornings and got breakfast started before she even had her first cup of joe, so that her children had enough nutrition to go to school and do a good day's work and be somebody. She would drive them to special extracurricular activities, band practice, football practice, baseball practice. She helped them pack for college. She helped them get their education. She helped them have someone to talk to when they felt like the world was crashing in, when they were having a fight with their spouse. And now her children were doing well and didn't need her anymore. She felt kind of silly because nobody at that Thanksgiving table had even eaten any of her food. Her squash casserole had eggs and cheese in it, and nobody was eating eggs and cheese. Her green bean casserole had cream of mushroom soup in it and French fried onion rings, and nobody was eating cream of mushroom soup or deep fried foods. Nobody touched her sweet potato pie, and her biscuits were completely untouched. Her daughter, Lou, had always loved biscuits. She'd always loved biscuits, but they were not on the dietary list anymore. The world had changed. She didn't know what to think about these people who ate pink fish for Thanksgiving supper. And while she was thinking this, she saw something zip along in the distance and come close to her. It was a little thing, no bigger than your hand, with a crested top and a black mask, a red cardinal. The bird landed on that branch of that pine tree just in front of her, and it just stopped and it looked at her a little bit, and it leapt forward a little bit closer to her, and it just looked at her. That bird, that hardy bird that doesn't leave when things get tough or when things feel like they've changed. She heard the screen door slap behind her, and it was Lou who stood behind her mother. She said, "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm sorry you went to all that trouble cooking that stuff. I should have told you. Should have told you that we'd changed our diets." And Aunt Eula said, "Oh, it's all right. It's okay. I understand. You got to do what the doctor says." She said, I hope you leave a few biscuits for me. I'll eat them when JD's not looking." "Oh, yeah, you take as many as you want, baby. You take as many as you want." Lou put her arm around her mother. She said, "What are you looking at?" My Aunt Eula nodded into the distance. She said, "Honey, you see that bird on that branch?" She said, "You see how it's just, my mother used to say long time ago, whenever you saw a red cardinal bird on a branch or anywhere, that meant that somebody you loved was thinking of you from the great beyond." She said, "Really? Granny used to say that?" "Oh, yeah. She used to believe that whenever you saw a red bird, it was just a sign from above." And then Lou said, well, you think that red bird is a sign from heaven? Man, you'd have said, oh, I know it is. I think that bird right there is your granny. And she's just coming to say hello to us on the Thanksgiving celebration day. And Lou said, Mama, if you believe that bird is really granny, if you believe that bird is truly a messenger from the great beyond, then why don't you give up eating poultry and birds and meat and become a pescatarian? Hey, thanks for having me today. It's your pleasure. Thanks for listening. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Sean of the South. I've been your host today, Sean Dietrich, and man, it's been a bona fide pleasure, if I do say so myself. Hope you join us next week, and maybe even the week after that, if you ain't got nothing going on. That wonderful music you heard behind me today was the music of the Misty Mountain String Band. The Misty Mountain String Band draws their influence from old-time music, Americana, and bluegrass. These guys aren't just good, these guys are Kentucky and Virginia good. Do yourself a favor and check out their music online at the Misty Mountain Stringband.com, or find them on iTunes, Spotify, and any other platform you can think of. Download their album, you won't be sorry you did. To find anything more about what I do, you can visit SeanoftheSouthShow.com. And while you're there, I hope you take the time to look up our archived episodes, beginning with the very first one all the way to the one you just heard. And if you're there for a little bit longer, take the time to drop me a line, because I love to hear from my friends. Tell me about your birthday announcements, wedding invitations, bar mitzvahs, church potlucks, ice cream socials, and any other event you can think of, because I love to read that stuff over the air from my friends. And speaking of friends, the shin bone is a device solely made for finding truck hitches in the dark. Adios.
On the Muddy Buggy, Mississippi River, where the catfish